At just 8 months pregnant, Jennifer Miller crumpled to the floor when her husband's cruelty finally went too far. Struggling for breath, her world drifted into silence, until her 3-year-old son dropped his toy truck and remembered something she had once told him: "If mommy falls and doesn't wake up, you call 911. With tears running down his cheeks, his little fingers fumbled across the phone, even as his father tried to snatch it away. But soon, the wail of sirens cut through the air. Neighbors peeked from their porches, murmuring among themselves, while one small, trembling voice revealed a truth no one in that neighborhood could ignore. Before diving deeper into this story, we'd love for you to tap that subscribe button. Your support really means a lot. It helps us keep sharing powerful stories like this one. Now, let's get back to what happened that day. It had started like any other morning in that quiet neighborhood, but inside one modest house, the atmosphere was heavy. Pale stripes of daylight slipped through half-closed blinds, stretching across the living room floor. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, louder than it should have been. Jennifer, a young black mother with her belly round from carrying her child, tried to steady herself on the edge of the couch. She rubbed her aching back, wincing from the sharp pangs that came with pregnancy. Her little boy sat on the carpet, rolling his toy truck back and forth, his small hands still smudged with crayon from coloring earlier. From outside, a neighbor's voice drifted faintly through the open window. 2 women walked by, whispering in low tones. "Poor thing, he never gives her a break," one said. "I've seen the bruises," the other muttered, shaking her head before their footsteps faded down the sidewalk. Then the front door swung open with a heavy thud. Her husband, Robert, stepped inside. His pale face was tight with anger, his suit jacket tossed carelessly onto a chair like it meant nothing. The second he saw her, his eyes narrowed. She had been sitting there trying to ease the swelling in her legs, but to him, it looked like laziness. "You're useless," he spat, his voice cutting sharp through the room. He paced the floor, his shoes thudding against the wood, jaw tight, nostrils flaring with every shallow breath. Jennifer tried to rise, to steady herself and maybe calm the storm, but her body was weak. A bead of sweat slipped down her temple. On the carpet, her son looked up, sensing trouble. Robert stepped closer, the air thickening with tension. He hissed cruel words under his breath, each one dripping with venom. Jennifer's hand instinctively shielded her stomach, but it didn't stop him. His shove landed hard, maybe harder than he meant, or maybe exactly as hard as he wanted. She stumbled. Her knees gave way. The floor slammed into her body with a heavy thud. Her vision blurred, her head spun, and a sharp pain tore through her abdomen, stealing the air from her lungs. She gasped, but the sound was too faint for anyone beyond that room to hear. Her son's toy truck hit the ground as he rushed to her side. He tugged at her arm with tiny hands, tears filling his wide eyes. But Robert only muttered about her embarrassing him again before storming down the hallway. The boy's cries echoed in the room. Jennifer lay still, her chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. The steady ticking of a wall clock marked the seconds, stretching each one into forever. The moment felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. The little boy crouched beside her, patting her arm with trembling hands. "Mommy, wake up, please," he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered, but stayed closed. Her breathing was faint, each inhale a battle she seemed to be losing. The boy's world felt impossibly large, his toys scattered across the carpet, the walls pressing in, the tick of the clock pounding louder and louder. He sniffled, wiped his nose on his sleeve, and glanced toward the hallway where his father had disappeared. No help was coming from there. For a long moment, he froze, his small shoulders shaking. Then, like a spark in the darkness, a memory surfaced, his mother's voice, soft and gentle, almost like a lullaby. "If mommy falls down and doesn't wake up, you pick up the phone and you press these numbers, 911. His eyes darted to the phone resting on the table. It looked so far away. He scrambled onto the couch, stretching as far as he could, his tiny fingers just grazing the edge. The phone slid forward, but still out of reach. Frustration bubbled up into a whimper as his nails scraped against the smooth surface. The boy didn't quit. With a determined grunt, he dragged a cushion off the couch, stacked it under his feet, and reached again. This time, his fingertips brushed the phone, and it slid into his little hands. His breathing quickened, nervous and uneven. He had watched adults use this device countless times, but in that moment, it felt heavier, more serious, almost alive. He pressed the buttons clumsily, each beep echoing through the silent house like a clap of thunder. Then the line clicked. A woman's voice, calm yet firm, filled his ear. 911, what's your emergency? His lips trembled, words tumbling out between sobs. Mommy's on the floor, she won't wake up. Baby inside. There was a pause, and then the dispatcher's tone softened like a blanket being wrapped around him. Sweetheart, you did the right thing. Can you tell me your name? Can you stay on the phone with me? The boy nodded hard, even though she couldn't see him. He gripped the phone tighter, tears spilling down his cheeks. Off in the distance, a faint hum of sirens began to stir, an urgent sound, but one that carried hope with it. For the first time that day, the child wasn't completely alone. He clung to the phone, listening to the stranger's steady voice guiding him through the fear. His little breaths came in hiccups, the kind that follow heavy crying. Stay with me, sweetheart. Can you tell me where you live? The dispatcher asked gently. The boy's eyes darted around the living room before landing on the window. He couldn't spell the street name, but he remembered something his mother had told him once. Our house has the red door with the flower pot. Mustering every ounce of courage, he whispered into the receiver, the red door with the flower. On the other end, the faint sound of typing clicked through the line. We've got it. Help is on the way. Don't hang up. At that moment, his father appeared at the far end of the hallway. His face darkened when he saw the phone pressed against his son's ear. Each step he took was heavy, the floorboards creaking under his weight. What are you doing? He snapped, his voice sharp as glass. The boy froze, heart racing. He clutched the phone tighter, pressing it to his chest like a shield. His father's shadow loomed over him, swallowing the room. Fear shrank the boy's world to nothing but that moment. Sweetheart, are you still there? The dispatcher's voice crackled through the line. The boy whimpered, yes. But before he could say more, Robert lunged forward, yanking the phone from his small hands. His grip was so tight the plastic creaked. Raising it to his ear, he was ready to curse at whoever dared be on the other side, but the dispatcher's firm voice cut him off. Sir, emergency services are already on the way. Stay where you are. For the first time, his composure cracked. His jaw clenched, and rage simmered in his eyes. He slammed the phone onto the table and began pacing like a trapped animal. This is your fault, he hissed toward his unconscious wife. Outside, the sound of sirens grew louder, climbing in pitch until they filled the entire street. Neighbors stepped onto porches, whispering. Something's happening over there. Didn't I tell you? I've seen her limping before. That man's no good. Red lights flashed through the windows, casting streaks of crimson across the living room walls. Tires screeched. Car doors slammed. Heavy boots thundered up the walkway. Robert stiffened, his eyes flicking toward the back door as if weighing an escape. But it was too late. A knock pounded against the front door, sharp and commanding. Emergency services. Open up. The boy bolted to his mother, wrapping his arms around her still body. His little voice trembled against her ear. They're here, Mommy, they're here. The front door burst open, flooding the room with harsh beams of flashlights and the solid weight of authority. For the first time all day, Hope walked into that house. Paramedics rushed in first, their navy and neon uniforms blurring with speed. One dropped to Jennifer's side, checking her pulse, while another unrolled equipment with practiced urgency. Behind them, two officers entered. Their presence was quieter but heavier, their eyes scanning the room in an instant, taking in the woman on the floor, the boy clutching her arm, and the husband standing rigid in the hallway, fists clenched. "Sir, step aside," one officer commanded firmly. Robert forced a nod, his face ghostly pale under the flicker of red and blue lights bleeding through the window. But his eyes wouldn't stay still, they darted from the paramedics to his son, as if searching for an escape or calculating his next move. On the floor, the little boy whispered over and over, his voice breaking with desperation, "Wake up, Mommy. Please, wake up." One paramedic glanced at the child with softened eyes before turning back to his partner. "She's fading fast. We need to move her now." As they unfolded the stretcher, an officer crouched down to the boy's level, keeping his tone steady and calm. "Hey, buddy, can you tell me what happened?" The boy sniffled, wiping his sleeve across his nose. His tiny voice cracked, but the words that left his mouth cut sharper than anything else in the room. "Daddy pushed Mommy." Silence fell. The words hung in the air, heavier than the sirens screaming outside. Robert's head whipped toward the boy, his face flushing with rage. "That's ridiculous," he barked, stepping forward. "He's just a kid. He doesn't know what he's saying." The officer raised a hand, palm out. "Sir, I need you to stay right where you are." At the open doorway, neighbors had gathered, drawn by the chaos. Their whispers rippled like waves. "I knew it," one woman muttered. "I always saw bruises on her arms," another added. A man folded his arms, shaking his head. "He's been hiding behind that fancy suit for too long." Robert's composure began to splinter. His voice rose, desperate, almost frantic. "You don't understand, she's weak, always making drama." But before he could finish, Jennifer stirred. Lying on the stretcher, her eyes fluttered open. Her lips trembled, and her voice, though fragile, carried a truth no one could ignore. "He did this, protect my baby." The room fell silent. Even her son stopped crying, staring at her with wide, tear-streaked eyes. The officer's jaw tightened. "Sir, you're under arrest for domestic assault and endangerment." The sharp click of handcuffs snapped through the air, the cold metal biting into wrists that had struck without consequence for far too long. Robert's protest sounded hollow now, drowned out by the quiet strength of witnesses who had finally seen enough. As officers marched him toward the patrol car, neighbors stepped back, some shaking their heads, others whispering prayers under their breath. The boy pressed close to his mother, his small fingers gripping the stretcher as if refusing to let go. The truth had surfaced, and there was no hiding it anymore. Outside, the night air was cool but heavy with sirens and murmured voices. Neighbors lingered on porches, some clutching robes tighter, others holding their children closer, all watching as Robert was shoved into the back of the patrol car. His face was pale, his eyes darting wildly, as if he couldn't quite grasp that the power he once held had slipped clean out of his hands. Inside the ambulance, the world felt different. The steady beeping of monitors filled the silence, reassuring in its rhythm. Jennifer lay on the stretcher with an oxygen mask pressed over her face, her hand weakly reaching out. Her son sat beside her, legs dangling, clutching her hand with both of his. She turned her head slightly, eyes glassy but awake. Words wouldn't come, but her thumb traced across his knuckles, carrying a message far louder than speech: "You saved me." One of the paramedics leaned closer to the boy, offering a gentle smile. "You know, if you hadn't called, we might not be here right now. You're a brave little man." The boy blinked, not fully understanding the weight of his actions. All he knew was one thing: his mommy was breathing again. As the ambulance pulled away, two neighbors stood at the curb. Their voices were low, but certain. "That boy is a hero." "Yeah," the other replied, shaking her head. "Stronger than most grown men I've ever seen." At the hospital, doctors moved quickly, checking Jennifer and the unborn baby. Relief swept across her face when they confirmed the heartbeat was strong. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pulled her son close, whispering softly into his hair. The image was unforgettable, a fragile mother, a child far too young for the weight he carried, yet steady enough to tip the scales of justice. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or capes. Sometimes, they're just 3 years old, with a trembling voice and a phone in their hands. What happened next shook the entire neighborhood, leaving everyone to ask themselves a question: would I have the same courage a 3-year-old showed when everything was on the line?